I'm pretty sure that you're aware that there are stages of scoliosis which are evaluated according to the degrees and measurement. So, in fact, anything that gets the angle exceeding 45 degrees, that's is a fourth stage, fourth degree, whichever way, right? And it's really important to understand that beyond that initial mark of 45, 50 degrees, degrees that are measured afterwards, they don't really carry much of the specific meaning as of being like linked to their condition. Plus minus 10, 15, 20 degrees here or there, it's not really a solid indicator of where the person is and whether it's not a marker of progress or regression, right? So it's just a different, after those 45, 50 degrees, the person moves into a different status, a different league, which is highlighting the fact that yes, we see serious challenges, yes, we see serious weaknesses, but definitely the scoliosis itself cannot be like looked as a centerpiece. It's a sign, an indication of serious problems, that's no doubt, but it's not the epicenter. So the cobb measurement itself, right? So where it has this reference to, actually it's very geometrical, right? So you see it sort of, it relies on the equivalence between the horizontal and the vertical additives, but because it measures the horizontal thing rather than deviation from the vertical line, it is very dependent on the orientation of the single vertebra. So, and in turn, the orientation of the single vertebra is very dependent on, well, we kind of exclude the wedge shape, but it's very dependent on the spacing. When the spacing is very fused, the cobb angle kind of gives a bit better impression of what things are, because it doesn't take into account the participation of intravertebral spaces. So it's a lot of things which are linked to it. When we move into degrees of this kind, then really that's always coming together with very marked rib cage deformities. The whole thing which actually has to be seen, and it also has to be some other factors related to the specifics of generally the tissue composition and so on and so forth. So it's a lot of other things. So the actual spinal thing cannot really be the center of reasoning, because it's not the first one to change, it's not the leading one, it's not the most important one to change. So of course, when it comes to those 70, 90 and so on degrees, so they are also coming together with the respiratory, well, the breathing. Okay, so the breathing challenges which are kind of clinically detectable. Also, the big motivation which you might be explained for the whole thing to be, for example, operated. So that would be that the risks of cardiopulmonary complications at the grown-up age would be 5 times or even 10 times higher than with the regular individuals. So all these numbers and so on, so they kind of make the case for the scoliosis focus in the usual medical course, but still, there is always a question, right? Where is the horse and where is the cart? Is it a scoliosis that causes the respiratory challenges, or is it the other way around, where the original respiratory limitations and the need to adjust to the like respiratory production within the context of the brain injury and the related limitations, so whether that's the factor that actually eventually leads to scoliosis. So that's really the central point when the person does the breathing, right? So what's happening? That breathing brings this downwards pressure into the abdomen, this cascade and so on, which actually facilitates the development of the pelvis. But at the same time, this overall, not just expansion, contraction of the diaphragm, but the overall expansion through the inhalation feeds their development of the back. That's the essential part. This is the key driver. 20,000 times a day, a strong respiratory effort that is able to go with, overcoming some of this resistance of the back and push into it. That's really the essential driver of symmetry, the essential driver of the back development, and so on. And what is happening with the brain injury and the kind of crisis of birth there? The person finds herself in the situation where she needs to find very quickly the answers to the respiration. You need to get the easy solutions. And the easy solution, number one, would be very simple. So instead of putting this downwards pressure against the contents of the abdomen, it's actually very effective to just tilt the chest somewhat more, so the diaphragm would be actually working not so much downwards, but really very much forwards. So that's the quickest solution. And the origins of everything are the respiratory action, because the child needs that basic survival. Unless you are able to provide this 98% whatever oxygen saturation, then it's not going to work, right? So it's the gas exchange which goes between the oxygen and carbon dioxide has to give you these high numbers. To do this, she needed the full tilt of the rib cage, and as a result, her back had never a chance to develop. So she did that critical tilt of the rib cage, which kind of removed it from this dorsal projection, so the back just doesn't develop. And again, what is the primary driver of the back? Is the respiration. Because in utero, there is no way to develop the back. The back and the pelvis, they're not developable. If you look at it as a kind of development of the 20 years of skyscraper, so like when you start, when you're born, it's the story number one, the story number two, and so on. So, and then you have, like by the completion of the skeletal growth, when for the 20-year-old, you have to get a 20-story high skyscraper. So, but the challenge is that the foundation of this skyscraper, which is supposed to handle the whole kind of mechanical weight of it and all the loads, is being built at a very early age. So it's within the first year you have to build enough so it would last not only year, 1 year, 2 year, 3, and so on, where in the early years you can kind of cheat, you don't need so much on the back end for that size, but this is the time to develop the back that you will need later when you are bigger.